So I've just come across the distinct keyword in Odin, and I did that by looking into the packages. I was looking at the time packages to see how Odin handles time and stuff. I noticed there was a type here called duration, and it had the distinct I64. I had a pretty good idea what distinct actually meant in this context, but I decided to play around with it a little bit just to make sure I was on the same track as what I was thinking. Now, in case anybody wants to see some actual documentation on distinct, the closest I could find was if you go into docs and then you go into the overview section, you click F there to just kind of find. You come down, you can see here distinct types. And it says a distinct type allows for the creation of a new type with the same underlying semantics. So my int is a distinct type of integer, and it asserts that my int is not equal to an integer. So what that means is if you create something that is a distinct type of something else, functionally it is exactly the same, but logically it is different. Because Odin doesn't do implicit type conversions, what this means is that you can have a bunch of things that are of the same type and they will not accidentally mix together in your code. The best way I've ever heard this explained to me is when I was learning before in some lecture, I came across a similar concept in a different programming language. And the way the lecturer explained it to me was you can't add fish to trees to get speed. And this is the example here. This is my example. I'm just iterating what somebody else told me once in the past, and I have no idea where they got it from, if it was their own made-up example, or they also got it from a book. But you see here, we've got a small program, and in this, we have fish, which is an integer type. We have trees, which is also an integer type. And then we have speed, and speed is the fish plus the trees. Now, computationally speaking, this is perfectly sound. Fish is an integer, trees is an integer, and therefore speed is going to be inferred to be an integer. So when we run this program, we are going to get an actual result. But now, logically, that makes no sense. Why would you get speed from fish and trees? And this is an extreme example. I highly doubt you could ever come up with a proper programming example where you were combining fish and trees to get speed. Maybe you can come up with some creative method, but realistically speaking, this is just an extreme example to demonstrate upon. So what happens if I wanted to make sure nobody in the code base could ever accidentally do this? Because this is what distinct types are mostly there for. They are there to stop one of the biggest sources of errors entering into the program, and that source of error is you, the human, the actual programmer. You will most likely make a hell of a lot more mistakes than the underlying machine will. It'll be mostly your fault when things go wrong. So if we were to do fish and then call it a distinct type, and then it is a distinct integer, and then we come down here. So I'll tell this is going to be a new type. So I'm just going to underscore this with type. And then I say, instead of fish being an integer, it is in fact a fish type. You can obviously name this whatever you want. If we try to run this again, you're going to see that we are getting errors. I can't say that word today. Mismatched types in binary expression fish plus trees, fish versus int. And it's basically saying I've got two types here and I don't implicitly convert types. You have to tell me explicitly how to do it. So again, we'll come up here and we'll make our tree type. Now we'll make that a, can I just be fancy in Vim? Yes, I think I can. Ooh, slowly learning how to use this editor. Right. And then we'll tell you that you are equal to our tree type. And I think it was 8 before, something like that. And again, if we go into this, we're going to get the same error. So what happens now? How do I actually get these numbers to work together if I did want these numbers to actually work together? Well, you can convert them. So one other thing we'll do, we'll quickly make our speed type. That will do. And what we can do is if for some reason we absolutely wanted these numbers to actually combine together, we can then cast them into the proper types, the same way you would just with integers and floats in any other type you might be able to do conversions on. So we'll say that you are a speed type, cast, and then this one as well will be a cast to a speed type because they're all integers under the hood. Computationally, they are the same. And I've got an S there, tree. That's because trees has an S, so this should now compile. Yeah, and there we go. We get our number. But what has this actually done for us? What you can see here is even though this makes no logical sense, You can see by the fact that I have had to convert them into the speed type, even though you might not understand why the programmer has done it, there's clearly a reason. You can't accidentally convert these into the speed type. You've had to explicitly type this out. So you know somewhere down the line there was an actual decision made to force these to turn into a speed type. And if you're lucky, there will be a comment or some documentation explaining it to you. Now, for a more better example, let's go ahead and say you weren't working with speed. A more realistic example would be, let's say you were working with measurements. So we can have meters, and then another type of common measurement is also feet. Now, famously, these don't really combine very well. They're very distinct measurements. So if you wanted to have, I don't know, just some distance, and then you wanted to say distance was in meters, but somewhere along the line, you had some other distance, but this was imported from a different library, imported from a different data set. So then you can have these distance in feet. So these two will compile into their 0 values. So if we just quickly eliminate this and I just type in dist here, you'll see this program will load. No, it won't, because I've spelled that wrong. And now, if you were to ever be in the situation where you're working with a program that does happen to have meters in it and does happen to have feet in it, if you wanted to get some new value that actually combine these together, you can't accidentally go dist plus dist, but the version of it in feet, and then print out the x value or use the x value somewhere later on in your program. And this is very important for programming critical systems, things that cannot fail. A good example might be the parking system or the braking system of a car. If you need this car to brake at a certain distance, so let's say it needs to slam on the brakes when it's a meter away from something, if you are waiting for that and you've accidentally got your feet mixed up with your meters, then that's going to be catastrophic, because feet are much smaller than meters, which means that vehicle is going to apply the brakes way too late. In the worst case scenario, somebody's going to die. So that is a reason why you would want to make something distinct in programming, where you want to have something that is kind of computationally the same but logically separate, to eliminate your own errors within programming. And a good example of this, I believe, is the Mars rover crash speed to meters. This should hopefully come up. Yeah, how NASA lost its Mars climate orbiter from a metric error. I believe if you read into this, again here, due to a feet to meters confusion. So by having stuff like this inside of your code, if you are working on a critical system or something that absolutely cannot fail, then by having everything its own distinct type, you can eliminate a lot of errors that could potentially happen. Maybe you're an amazing programmer and you never make errors, in which case, yeah, you could get away without having the distinct. But for safety reasons, this is very useful. Or just for debugging reasons. The fact that these two are distinct types, you can automatically go into your code and just look, it's not that error. It can't be that error because they are distinct from each other. It has to be something else going wrong. So it can help in the debugging process as well. And yeah, that is just my explanation looking into what a distinct type is in Odin. So I'll see you guys in the next one.